how to approach these questions that will be in component 2. They are stratification questions, and you'll be asked to look at a table with some data, which you can see here, and you'll be asked 3 questions about this table. Now, the first 2 will always be asking you to identify a particular statistic, or asking you to tell them maybe a difference, maybe between 2 bits of data from the table. So you do have to get used to looking at these tables and identifying, what are the differences between some of the percentages or whatever the data might be, or it'll ask you to pick out a particular number, like for this case it might be, which group have the lowest number of people who went to independent schools, and you would say, look at the table, and you might say footballers. The issue, and from what I've seen, that students are fine with those types of questions, just identifying information in those tables. What we seem to have picked up on is that there are problems with students describing the patterns or trends shown in the table. Okay, and the question will always ask you to describe 2 patterns or trends shown, and to support your answer with reference to the statistics in the table. So in the most recent assessment, lots of students were good at talking about the statistics, or saying, look, 71% became senior judges. But what we found was that lots of students were not specifically referring to the different groups mentioned or writing in a full way. And what I mean by this is where it says describe 2 patterns or trends shown in the table, the sorts of answers that we kept on getting, I will show you just now. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the best way to do this. This is the mark scheme, and this is an example of what the responses we kept on getting. So students would write at the bottom, it says, one pattern is the number of them that become senior judges dropped from 71% in 2014 to 65% in 2019. Now, the problem with that sentence is that I, as an examiner, I can't tell who are they talking about. One pattern is the number of them. I was like, well, who do you mean? Now, obviously, this person is writing about the number of people that went to independent schools. So if I go back to my previous one of the patterns is, it's percentage of people that went to independent schools. That's really important. Oh, sorry, I'm just sort of doing this faffing, a terrible way of doing it. It's the people who attended independent schools. But because all they've said is they have got those jobs, I don't know who they're talking about. So you need to be incredibly specific about exactly which groups you're talking about. So here it says one pattern is the number of them that became senior judges dropped from 71% in 2014 to 65% in 2019. Well done for using the data, but we can't give you any marks because, as it says in the mark scheme just there, it says 1 mark for a basic trend or pattern. Describe people who went to independent schools are more likely to be in the top jobs. So you had to get that point across before you could get the development, which is using the statistics, which you can see highlighted in the mark scheme, where it says, e.g., 7% of people went to independent schools, but 65% of senior judges went to independent schools. That's what they were looking for, the exam board. In this case, the other point that you can make is the idea that the football was the only area with no significant advantage if you went to independent school or not, which is not a massive surprise. Some really good response below here that you can have a look at, if you'll let me, is this idea here that another pattern is that even though they are only 7% of the population, they are between 29 to 33% of MPs, showing they have lots of influence over policy making. Unfortunately, that is also 0, okay? The whole overall, this was 0 out of 4, because again, I'm not clear about who they are. So when you get these questions with a table, okay, like this, okay, be specific about which groups you're talking about. Use all the information in the table when you answer this question. So, for example, like I said before, make sure you talk about the number of people who went to independent schools, but also pay attention to this bit of information at the bottom, which says that, you know, only 7% of the people from the general population went to independent schools. Talk about those things. Some make merely general points and say, oh, they end up in really high-paid jobs. Well, don't just say that. Use the information from the top. Say senior judges, for example. Talk about armed forces officers. Use the actual phrases and the words that are being used to kind of structure the table. Okay. Otherwise, the examiner is not going to be able to see what you're actually trying to write about. So I've written an improved version of those 2 responses, which was to identify 2 patterns and trends and use statistics from the table to back it up. So I've written one pattern is the number of people who went to independent school that became senior judges, 1 mark, dropped from 71% in 2014 to 65% in 2019, another mark. Another pattern is that even though people who attended independent schools are only 7% of the population, they are between 29 to 33% of MPs, showing students from independent schools have lots of influence over policy making. Okay, that's the additional mark. I know it seems really, really pedantic because I can tell what you're trying to tell me about the table, but you've got to imagine that your teachers aren't going to be the ones marking your exam paper. It's going to be examiners. They're going to be marking thousands of exam papers, and they're going to be looking for very specific information and very specific ways of answering these questions. So next time you get a question that has a table, so it'll be your number 2 in your component 2 paper. Look at the table and make sure you use the language and the words used to describe each of the categories when you're identifying the patterns. Thanks for listening, and good luck on your next attempt at one of these types of questions.